Hey Josh, good to see
Hey,
you.
Olaf.
What's rocking in Orlando?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you from Berlin now? You're back home?
Yeah, yes, I'm back
Yeah,
home.
yeah.
It's an
Good stuff.
exciting place at the moment, and exciting stuff is happening. I had my first Berlin leadership training last week, and people were amazing and amazed. And we actually we did it in a space that I'm going to choose for very probably for our P3 thing when we're
Yeah,
bringing your workshop to Berlin in June.
yeah.
It was an amazing space on top of Berlin with light from all sides and a circular space that has windows all around. And yeah, it's in the middle of town. So that was cool.
Yeah.
And one thing that was great about the training was that there were two people attending from the leadership team of an organization I'm going to work with now. And they were kind of testing the training because I want to run it internally with them and all of their colleagues. And I heard feedback from both of them about each other and from a third colleague about each of them yesterday, that they all couldn't believe how much that guy has changed just since
Wow.
Friday.
Yeah.
And what I didn't know when these people said we'll join is that they didn't get along very well. I can understand how that happened knowing them now, but I
Yeah.
didn't know them before. So it was great for them to actually basically reboot their relationship in the course,
Yeah.
and then come with that. Oh wow, we could all reboot our relationships in the leadership team, and how great would that be? So they're now
Wow.
coming with this big intention, and yeah, that by itself is already transformative in the organization, and I'm enjoying to see it cooking.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always fun when that kind of stuff emerges in a course that you're doing, like separate of your knowledge. It's like, oh, there's a conflict here. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Great.
Another thing that was great yesterday, one thing that's not fully decided yet in the organization is who is going to participate in the leadership training. And the interesting learning I took yesterday is maybe the most important part of an internal leadership training is deciding who's joining. Because there's so many risks. Do we only take the people who currently have formal leadership positions? Then we have the risk that they develop a language and understanding of leadership that other people in the organization don't share if our goal of the transformation of the organization is that we actually distribute leadership to more people and more people get self-organized and take more responsibility, do more leadership, then we would like those people to also have the same language and the same reflection tools and the same thinking about what kind of difference am I making and how does that relate to my intention, etc.
Yeah.
Another risk is if we open it up, then people who join the course might feel entitled to a promotion because now they've been part of a leadership program. People might be envious that other people participate. Different parts of the organization might think, okay, I need to bring 5 people from my team, and another leader might say, oh, I just take one from my team because they actually have to work. I have to
Yeah.
provide a service 24/7, so I can't just take all my people into a leadership training for 3 days. Customer support can't stop for 3 days, marketing can. So there'll be
Yeah.
envy and lots of beautiful conversations. And I was part of this discussion yesterday where I could see how the different personalities and the different needs for structure, the different interpretations of rules and all of that was playing out into a beautiful drama. And then calming down into, oh, this is the problem. Oh, what if we did it like that? That's not what we agreed. Would it work? Yes. Would you be okay with it? Yes. So does it matter that it's not what we agreed? Yes.
Society has rules. We can't
Yeah,
abandon structure.
yeah. So that was another learning when you have people on that spectrum of I love rules because they keep everything safe. And I love rules because they keep everybody else out of the way and they give me options. Or I love chaos because it gives me options, right? Which is more my end of that spectrum. These people appear to be privileged to those people, because how I operate in a system with like negotiable rules is not understandable to somebody who thinks rules are straight and rigid and firm and are not to be debated. So what I do just seems to be a privilege. And that makes them envious.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting dynamic I hadn't been so aware of before. And revealing that to the people who had this privilege unknowingly, that was a great eye opener for the conversation. So yeah, I love this work. It's so great to. What are you currently puzzled about, interested in leadership?
In leadership, most of my focus, I've been pushing myself into a new old role. So I think you've seen this lately. I've been working on Camp Lionheart, which is a summer camp for teens, and now I'm in the position of running the camp, leading the curriculum, and recruiting my camp counselors. And which these are the newer parts of the role where I never did that before. Like I was a camp counselor and I got to be a part of the community, but there was always someone above me that was kind of like running things or like more responsible, or at least like if the liability issues come down, somebody else has to deal with that, not me.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's all me. Like I am at the top of this hierarchy, so to speak. So just noticing the weight of that responsibility, noticing problems that I never realized existed before just because I never had to deal with them.
Wow.
So it's really, really interesting. And also having the responsibility of, like I feel this call to inspire people to join in on my dream. Like this is mine now. Like I'm the most excited person in the room about this issue, and it's my job to inform, educate, and inspire other people to join in on my dream. And so it's just really pushing me into some interesting areas of growth and having to adjust my normal patterns and step outside the box a little bit. It's uncomfortably exciting.
Yeah, that's a very, very special kind of leadership, being a founder. And stepping into that energy, owning that power and the authority that comes with it, because it's your story you're making real. And you become the author of your story, but also the author of the story of the group and the organization and the whole thing that emerges. And this author ring gives you authority.
Yep.
And there's a lot of freedom, but there's also this weight. You can get into this Atlas kind of, now the whole word. Shit.
Over my shoulders.
Wait, I didn't ask for this. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I guess and that's part of the reason why for me, like one of the topics we talked about today was the qualities of leadership and the qualities of like what it is to be at the forefront of a group of any kind, really. It's something that's been on my mind so much lately because of P3 and when I'm doing the work for that organization, and then with the camp that I'm now sort of recreating because it used to exist, but now I'm trying to revive it in some ways. Just realizing so many aspects of what it means to be at the forefront. We had a meeting with all of the P3 instructors a couple weeks ago, and somebody referred to myself and Denise and Ali as sort of like upper management. It's the first time I've ever heard that term. And like at first, it was so interesting. At first, I had this aversion toward it. It's like no. I want to be one of you, and I just like we're all equal here, and equality being like a value judgment of some person's worth. Yes, we're all equal, but the truth is, I'm doing something different than the rest of them. And like for P3, I'm the program director, and I'm the one who's writing the notebook, and I was like, oh, wait, I have more responsibility. I have more authorship and authority in this than you do. And like that distinction is very valuable. So it's kind of the first time, surprisingly, in about a year of doing this work with P3 that I realized, oh, I need to start showing up with that level of authority as opposed to just like, hey, let's all do this. It's like, no, this is something that I took on, and realizing that there is a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And then a lot of, opportunity that I have available to me as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So really, really interesting growth that comes from that.
Wow. Yeah. And I remember having been in leadership situations where I didn't own my leadership. I didn't own the level of leadership, authority, whatever, being in the front that people saw in me. And if there's a mismatch, there is a certain aspect to that is just humility, and that's okay. But there's another aspect that can be risky if you influence people in a way that you are not aware of or that you're not acknowledging. I remember being at an event where somebody else did that and I didn't notice. But then when in hindsight we reflected, it was like totally, oh my God, this is happening to me too. He was a very charismatic guy, and he was the leader of the event, similar to the position you just described for yourself, facilitator and the kind of senior idea owner of the thing. And he was suggesting something like, hey, let's all go for dinner there, or something simple like that. So it wasn't a big thing. And everybody was just going. Like 50 people were just going and having that meal, and it was all okay. And then later, in some reflection, somebody said, oh, by the way, it was really not good that this dinner wasn't on the program. I had other plans. I wanted to, and then I didn't because we had to go to this dinner together. And we were like, what happened? This was just an idea. There was just an invitation. Like somebody wanted to have dinner, and the event was over. And then we said, no, actually it wasn't. It was the leader telling people we are going to have dinner. And there was absolutely no fucking way that they would not follow, because it was the group, peer pressure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this charismatic call was meant as an invitation. It was felt as an invitation, but to them, it was like, okay, we're having dinner. That's just stating. It's like stating if it didn't feel like an order, like they didn't have the freedom in that moment to actually say, oh, they weren't asked. Like it wasn't made explicit that it was a choice, and it didn't feel like a choice. And yeah, if you are in a position of power and you're not aware of it, there's a risk that things like that happen. And yeah, having dinner without actually choosing to is not too bad thing, but other things could happen that you're not aware of and that later you don't want. So
yeah, that's something I've become very aware of, especially in the last year or so of being a facilitator, is realizing I have to be extremely impeccable with my word and how I phrase things, because having a room full of people who are just listening for my instruction, for listening to what we're doing next and that sort of thing, if they're listening to every single word I'm saying, not the intention behind the words.
Yeah.
So they get to experience it's like, but I think of the metaphor of like a car, and it's like my intention is the gas in the tank. My words are the dash.
Yeah.
And it's like what other people can see is just the dash. They don't actually see the intention. They don't have access to that. They get the representation of it, which is how I communicate it. And if that isn't as close to the intention as possible, then something gets missed.
Yeah. And remembering observing your facilitation from the point of view of a first-time participant, I remember being impressed with the coherence of your facilitations on several levels. So it was, this impeccable word was also, let's just take the same word, impeccable. How do you say that? Allegiance. Like, whom are you serving at a given moment? Most of the time, the space. Within that most of the time, the crowd. Within that, space within that, most of the time, the students.
Yeah.
And then they were very distinct, and you had a very gentle and elegant way of stepping from one of these containers to a smaller one and back out. There were these moments where you were working with one person or one team, and you gave them all the focus they needed, but then immediately going back and very explicitly so that the group felt, now we are in JOS space and JOS awareness again. And then being very coherent there, that that is what makes people feel safe.
And I love that metaphor. I heard you use it in the Calvin course too, the concept of containers. I think I've known what that was, but I never had a way of describing it. And I love that concept of moving in from, because in doing couples work, when I work with relationship therapy, like we talk about being in containment, meaning like I can contain my emotions, I can, and holding space for a relationship, it's like that becomes a container. And so I love that idea of being able to think in levels. Yeah. So yeah.
And also the areas of responsibility are become a lot clearer when you talk about that. When you say, okay, this is my thing, this is my space, this is my responsibility, these are my tasks. This is your space, this is your responsibility, your tasks, and then there's our container, which is a different one. It's not just a sum of the other two or whatever, some merging, amalgamation. It's a thing we create. And if we create it consciously and explicitly, it can be extremely safe, extremely strong, even if something happens to us individually or other things happen. But if we're not aware, and if we just like what's a good word? Blend is not a good word. If we confuse or conflate, maybe it's conflate. If we conflate our identity with the we identity, then things can go downhill very, very fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is relationship development 101.
Yeah.
Keep your containers clear and clean.
Yeah, and exactly.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit earlier about the aspects of leadership and thinking about the two qualities, and I know that you have different definitions for these than I kind of hold in my mind. So I'm really curious to hear your view on this. But the topic was the necessity for authenticity and integrity in leadership. And, and for me, those terms, the reason that those two jump out at me is like I try to be as very simplistic as possible because then I can remember.
Yeah.
But it is like authenticity being like what's real, what's true, versus integrity. The way that I think about integrity is wholeness, like the integrity of my being and including all parts and everything. Like I'm showing up as a whole human being. Like what is inside and what is outside is all included in those moments. So I'm being true and I'm being whole in my leadership.
Yeah. So yes, that works. I think that definition is complementary to the one I usually give. So I think a lot about, because I deal a lot with complex systems, and my leadership work or my work with leaders is very often about working with an organization where different people need different kinds of leadership, need different styles of leadership. And it's in most cases, it's not very helpful if we agree to all do the same thing or do the same thing in the same way. And the way that organizations used to be structured in the past with this machine metaphor was like, we need this well-oiled machine, we need well-defined parts, we need well-defined procedures, and then the human beings just fit into those nice boxes and then everything will run smoothly. Very, very boring. If you are in a very predictable world that scales well, then that works well. But if you are in an interesting world with opportunities for value creation are discovered as we understand our context, then this kind of organization fails rapidly and dies. So what we need is flexible organizations where different leadership styles, different ways of taking responsibility take place. all the time. And what is important so that people still feel safe and feel part of one organization is coherence. So it needs to be similar enough that it's recognizable as, yes, that's how we do things, but it needs to be able to be different enough so that it's still helpful in the specific situation. And in terms of coherence, authenticity to me is coherence between what you think and what you show up, what shows up. So that could be body language, it could be your talk, it could be what you do. So lying would be inauthentic.
Yeah.
And integrity is that you're true to your values. So it would be a coherence of values and action. So if I say I am a dishonest person, then lying would still be you could have integrity and be a liar if you say you're dishonest.
Yeah.
It will still be inauthentic. Because you're not speaking the truth.
With integrity.
Yeah. So finding examples like that is the way my brain separates these different words from one another. I had an interesting discussion about integrity at a meetup a few months ago where somebody did a game about values. And they were discussing all of these values, and people were doing a game where they had to pick like this value is more important than that value, etc. And then they were discussing like, is respect more important than curiosity and whatever. And that was an interesting conversation. The one thing that bothered me was that integrity was one of the values. And I was having a conversation with a facilitator later, and I said that to me, this doesn't make sense. Yes, integrity is important, but integrity is, do you just say you have those values, or do I actually see them? Do you espouse them? Do you live those values? And integrity is the degree to which these values actually are alive in what you say and do. And she was like, yes. And it's still a very important value. And like, it doesn't compute in my brain, but if it does in yours, okay, we're all different.
So for you, you're looking at this as like, integrity is not a value because it is a measurement of the degree to which values are conveyed outwardly.
Exactly. Yeah.
I guess I can see that, and I can also see that an aspect of clear, like effective integrity would be, I don't know, when you say values, I hear needs, like because I'm trained in nonviolent communication and that modality, so I'm always looking at feeling needs, and needs and values are used interchangeably a lot of times. So it's like I have a need for my own integrity. It's like there's a piece of me that longs for that.
Yes.
And that, and when I phrase it in that way, it's like I desire to be in integrity at all times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Except when I don't. And then like there's this like sort of balance. Like there might be times that I don't want to be in integrity, and then that shows, whether it's conscious or not, it shows up. But it's still when I'm as integrated as possible in all my actions, I long for that integrity. I long for that to be the case.
Yeah.
So I guess, that's it, and it is a measurement. I totally understand that. It's a measurement of the degree to which I'm able to act out my level of like what my values are. Yeah.
And I'm also a lot more familiar with the need language and thinking. It's more coherent with how I think about the human mind and emotional system. And as you're saying, this integrity as a value, as a need in that sense, would just be a function of how aware you are of shame. Shame would be the emotion that drives you towards integrity. So you would feel shame if you're not living up to your values, if you're not sticking to your own rules, if you are guilty of something in your own judgment, then you would feel shame, and shame would be the emotion that moves you towards. So as anger guards your boundary towards the outside, shame guards your boundary towards the inside, and that the result would be integrity. So integrity would be the kind of golden outcome of positive shame in the way that I understand this emotion. And in that sense, it makes sense that two different people having integrity, striving for integrity, being conscious about the need for integrity would have different importance. So sorting that into an order of values makes sense from that point of view. Thank you. I really like about you that you're one of those people where I can't leave a single conversation with you without learning something.
Likewise. It's part of why we do this. This is fun.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about being like purposefully exposing oneself to difficulty, adversity. I'm a huge fan of that kind of stuff. Probably almost just like bordering on masochism, where I really like that concept of, there's a concept in Stoicism called practicing poverty, I think it's called. Yeah. Where it's this idea of exposing yourself to some degree of difficulty or adversity on purpose to strengthen oneself. And I think conversations like this, where it's like, well, we don't necessarily, I'd say on a value level, I agree with you on so many things, and yet there's still so much to be learned. There's so many different ways in which you look at the world that are different from mine, and I get to learn from them.
Yeah, and likewise, just the other way around. And this is like going to the gym and training your muscles, right? It hurts. It takes up a lot of time, but you learn something, you grow.
Yeah.
And being uncomfortable, being in confusion, being in ambiguity, being in any of these states where you don't know is where we learn.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said. I was talking about this with a friend recently about this idea of exposing yourself to things that are uncomfortable. And I wonder what you think about this. But for me, it's the thing that really makes a person really, really resilient and growth-minded and able to adapt to what's going on is not necessarily whether or not I lean into discomfort or I don't lean into discomfort or anything around that. It's more so the meaning that I give the discomfort. Like what meaning do I attach to pain? What meaning do I attach to an uncomfortable situation or feeling embarrassment or something along those lines? And for me, it's been a grueling uphill battle to get myself to a place where I can attach the meaning to discomfort is, oh, I'm learning. Oh, I'm growing. Oh, this is hard because it's something I've never done before, and now I'm getting stronger. It's like I have to put that branding on that moment so that I don't pull away from it immediately. It's not like my hand in the fire. I say, ooh, that sucks. It's like, no, I'm actually getting stronger right now. Stay in there a little bit longer.
Beautiful. That adds a bit of understanding to something that I've been thinking about in the last months, is that part of our magic is that we can create spaces where people can stay longer in confusion, in ambiguity, and in all of these learning states, because we are providing this kind of bigger comfort zone for them. And the reason we can do that is exactly this. Maybe it's not the only one, but this ability to reframe. I heard this beautiful quote a few years ago that anxiety and excitement vibrate at the same frequency.
Yeah.
So they're chemically similar in the brain, but the difference is interpretation. So I now have this switch that when I feel worried and I have this like clench in my solar plexus area, and I'm like, I'm learning something. That's a switch I can just do like this, and then the anxiety, it's gone, and it's just you just also had this body language of like, oh, the roller coaster, we're going down.
And the difference between anxiety and excitement, like you're absolutely right. Physiologically, they're almost identical, and the difference being the meaning that I attach to it. It's all preparation. It's my body sort of revving up and saying, get ready. And it could be, get ready, something bad is coming, or get ready for something amazing. Like, who knows? And it's all future focused in terms of my body's preparing itself for something. I wonder what the value is. Is it something I'm looking forward to or something that I'm dreading?
Yeah.
And that all happens with like a decision. I can just decide, hey, I'm looking forward to what's about to come. it's going to be wonderful, or it's going to give me so much growth, and it still creates that momentum to move forward, or at least not slam on the brakes.
Yeah, beautiful.
So bringing this, because we're talking a lot about sort of like concepts, like bringing this back down to like real world application, because I'm like, you and I have talked a lot about doing some type of work where we're working with leaders and we're working with people who have who are sort of in the charge of leading others, right? That's the huge component. So I'm curious from your perspective, like what is the first or arguably the most important aspect of being authentic and being in integrity in leadership? Like I'm thinking about somebody who might listen to this video or might hear this concept and they're thinking, I don't even know where to start.
Wow. I think that's a topic for another conversation, because it's not like there's not a 1-minute answer. But I think the starting thing is treating this question like a mirror. Maybe actually write it down on a card, put it in your pocket, and make it a habit of looking at this. And like one thing, for instance, that's very simple and that I love is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do I gauge X? And in this case, going into this meeting, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do I gauge my current level of authenticity, integrity, and where do I want it to be?
Yeah.
So that would be a simple tool that as a leader you could just start your day with, today I want to be, and then at the end maybe you would keep a diary, and at the end of the day just gauge, okay, where was I? And maybe just remember the meetings and think like, I really didn't like that one and I never told anybody. That meeting was great. I could just be at my best. I was totally in grounded and in my power, and that felt authentic. Or in that meeting I felt really listened to, I felt seen and appreciated, and that felt authentic and made it easy. And then just like create awareness around this stuff, because it's not something that we learn in school. It's not something that we talk about. So the first thing we need to do is create some kind of mirror so that we can check, does this meet my expectations?
Yeah. And I like that idea too, because I think there's maybe not an error, but I think there's a lot of sort of like holes we can fall in when we start to prescribe to someone else how you ought to be, as opposed to finding like my own, like by my own definition, who is the best version of me, not based on something outside of me, not based on what I see this person doing and that person doing, but like how do I feel about who I am, or like asking that question, like how do I want to improve today, or what do I want to be as I go into this next experience? That's self-defined. I like that one.
Yeah, absolutely. That's also a great question. If you started, you could do the 1 to 10 thing for 1 week, and then you do this question for another week, and like in the morning as you're driving to work or commuting or just going up the elevator, getting some clarity on today, what's the best version of me that will show up in the office today? And then in the evening, looking back, did it work? And then gauge your level of honesty with yourself.
Well, yeah, I like that part too, because I think I'll speak for myself. It's like too often I can set myself on a really good intention, or like in the beginning, and then I don't measure it after the fact.
Yeah.
So I don't have objective, at least some type of information. I'm like sitting down and say, okay, how do I want to show up in this moment? And then I go into the moment, and then after the moment say, okay, how did that go? What did I learn? Well, I didn't quite hit the mark, and I want to improve. The value of that information in that moment is saying, oh, I didn't do what I intended to do. Why not? What happened? Was there unforeseen consequences to something? Did I not assess the situation properly? Or was there some deeper piece of me that I encountered and I realized that I actually didn't want to show up that way.
Yeah.
You know, oh, I want to show up charismatic and engaging in this thing. And meanwhile, there's a deeper piece of me that's really, really sad right now. And, in order to be charismatic and engaging, I have to abandon a part of me. And it didn't show up until I got in front of someone and I realized I had connection, and then that sadness comes up. So yeah, I think there's a piece about being able to measure that piece of reflection that you're talking about. It's like, can I measure before and after how I'm showing up in any situation?
Yeah, and then talking about authenticity, right? That was your first question. The next level then would be, as you have practiced this a little bit and worked on your courage, at some point you could go into that meeting and check in with that information and say, I'm in this meeting, I'm the senior leader. My own expectation of myself is charismatic, engaging. And the fact is, I want to be, and I'm sad. I'm in.
Yeah.
And then hear the welcome and inviting other people to check in like that as well. Would probably enable them to let go of the sadness. And it would be extremely charismatic because it's so inviting and not only authentic, but also vulnerable. And people would appreciate and attune to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so wow, now within 5 minutes, we created a toolbox for upping your, So we need to trademark this now.
Exactly.
And sell it to the masses.
Yeah, this is the stuff that I scratch my head about on a regular basis. And I think the reason for it for me is I think a lot of this stuff I do instinctively without having any clarity around it. It's just like, well, this is just what feels right, and that's how I'll push myself forward. And I think most people who are in this position, like I definitely see this with you, but there's just this natural sort of knack that you have for engaging human beings, and then the challenge is now to explain it. Like, you did this thing and you did it completely off the cuff, and it felt real and it felt authentic, and now I have to go back and explain why I did it in detail, and like what are the mechanics of authenticity and trust and being in integrity.
Yeah, I don't think it's mechanics, because it's the way these things work together is not mechanic. Like, there's no clear cause and effect. It's not Newtonian physics as a metaphor. It may be quantum mechanics. So there's influences, relationships, fields, and things showing up in weird places unexpectedly. But that doesn't mean you can't understand what happened in hindsight. And it might not be the why, the how might be very interesting. So being able as a leader to do something intuitively and then unpack, and you usually need somebody else who was present and who can give you feedback. I usually can't do this on my own. I need conversations like this, with the reflection on what actually happened, and to just take things apart and then also conceptualize and put it into understandable pieces.
I identify with that a lot. There's usually at least a couple of hours after every course I've ever done where Michelle or Denise or someone else who's close by me, not even that I don't even know that I ever, for me, I don't even know that I need a lot of feedback or information exchange. I just need to be able to talk through it and actually process it. And that's a reflection moment, just because I'm extroverted. So it's like having a face to look at while I do it is helpful.
It only hit me very recently that reflection is and has for a long time been my number one leadership development tool. And a mirror has this nice qualities that first, the mirror usually shows you where the problem really is. And the mirror also happens to show you the only thing that you can really change. So having a leadership development program as a set of reflection tools and reflection methods and reflection exercises is exactly what's needed to work with yourself. So it's basically just a set of mirrors.
There's a lot of hope in that statement that you just said.
Yeah.
Or empowerment might even be a better word. That if I can look into a mirror and I can see something worth changing, right? I see something that calls back to me as needing improvement. That the fact that I'm seeing it means that I have the ability to change it.
Yeah.
I think that's something that I hear very often, is this concept of almost debilitating not even self-reflection, it's criticism. It's shame-ridden, and I can see all these flaws within myself and feeling very ineffectual or powerless in my ability to change them. So I like the idea of, if I can see something that desires change within myself, I don't have the ability to have that sight without the power to also do it.
And this is where groups, and especially pairs, help. So if we reflect together and we are in a container where we have this agreement that we help each other develop our leadership, then you will stop me and I will stop you from going downwards in any spiral of, I'm so bad, I'm so inauthentic, I'm so whatever. We would stop that and say, hey, focus on this and move there. That's more helpful. So the pair or the human partner is turning that mirror thing into a positive mirror that's actually leading to improvement, instead of going into the self-criticism route.
Which speaks a lot to the quality of the partner. I mean, at that point, I'm thinking about at least what I know, the pieces that I know about what it is that you do, like where you're going into, groups and teams and stuff like that. It's like you're the partner at that point. You're the one that's coming into a system and saying, hey, I can show you the places, so that you don't allow your own internal philosophy to exacerbate the problem. I'm going to be here to stop it and then figure out how we can actually fix it.
Yes, and when doing a training where there are a lot of people I don't know, and they're coming from backgrounds and contexts that I don't know as well, and I'm just setting them up to have a pair conversation like this, like reflecting on something they've done or doing something together and then reflecting on it. It's just the concept of, or the context of a leadership development course, and the setting of the intention that we all want to develop as leaders. I think that's enough of a positive spin for these conversations to go exactly this way. And I don't need to be in it. It's just any human being can help any human being to improve how they see themselves. Even if they both have this tendency of seeing themselves badly, they can definitely help the other person to improve how they are seeing themselves.
Yeah, and so I imagine at that point, I'm just thinking through this, the thing that you are contributing at that moment is a container of non-judgment, a container of compassion, healing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So provided the arena for that, people are. I don't know if you agree with this, but it's almost like people are naturally inclined to improve.
Yes.
Or self-correct, maybe.
Yeah. I like that. We're unpacking parts of the magic of these trainings. That's great. As I'm thinking about open sourcing it, open sourcing that source code would be awesome, because it's a lot about how do we create a safe space for learning and improvement. And if people get this, that's awesome. Cool. I think we're stretching people's patience and perseverance in watching a video if we continue for much longer. I like this authenticity topic. I'm sure that we can come up with more details to that. I'm assuming our next conversation might be about what is this mysterious P3 thing that we're going to bring to Berlin, because we need to issue an invitation to the world so that they come.
Yes.
For those of you who have been watching this far, our current intention is to have a weekend, June 14 to 16, in the middle of Berlin. Have this beautiful man come here and facilitate, hopefully with me, a beautiful container of emotional literacy and agility.
Yeah.
With some sunshine and big views.
That's going to be a pretty exciting month too, because I have camp is almost right after that. So
Wow.
I'll be going to Berlin and coming right back, and then doing a week-long process with a bunch of teams. So
wow.
I'll imagine I'll just be like prime.
Yes.
I'll just be immersed in this experience of love and compassion and growth.
Yeah. Make sure you come a day early so I can show you Teufelsberg, which is my favorite spot in Berlin.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. Yeah. Michelle and I will be there. Probably at least a day or two to see the site.
Yeah, very good. It's probably also good to not be jet lagged when you start the course.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, looking forward to this, and forward to more conversations like this. Thank you very much, Josh.
Yeah, this is awesome. Appreciate it.
Let's rock this.